Welcome to Mixing with Mike, mixing tip. This is a little tip on adding attack to a kick drum using compression. So back to the same track that we were using with subtractive EQ, if you watched that video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add here a VCA compressor. VCA compressors are really great at adding aggressive attack because the nature of a VCA compressor is very aggressive, and that's typically the sound of SSL compressors are VCA based, and the API compressor, the 2500 here, is also VCA based. The DBX is another classic example of a VCA based compressor. Now, the way that you actually get more attack out of a kick drum is by the way that you set up the attack and the release settings, and that's really the whole key to the sound. Now, what's really great about this API EQ is that it also adds some tonal characteristic in terms of it has control over the knee, how aggressively the compression kicks in, and it also has a shape, what they call a tone, which filters the trigger signal so that it would be more or less affected by different frequencies. So let's start by playing the kick drum as it is with the compressor bypassed. So this is the basic kick drum sound. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop this in here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of bring up my threshold here so I start to see some gain reduction. Now, I'm not really looking at a ton of gain reduction here. But what I want to do is I want to slow down my attack. So why do I slow down the attack? The reason why I slow down the attack is that I want the actual transient signal of the kick drum to push through. So what happens is once the threshold is exceeded, you can see there's a slight delay before the needle moves, meaning that the attack pops through and the compression is applied directly afterwards. So we're going to find like a nice medium here. Let's start with 10 milliseconds. Now the next key is having a fast release. Okay, and so what we want to do here is set up the release time characteristic so that it has somewhat of a musical value to it, so that the release characteristic helps the kick drum to kind of pump or breathe with the music. With the API, this is not variable here, so what we have going on here we may just have to kind of settle on the best that we can get between the two times. So the other thing is I want to bring the ratio down fairly low. I'm not really interested in having a high ratio. Sometimes that'll give you a better sound, but typically I find lower ratios work a little bit better, and then we can set our threshold a little bit lower. So what I have here, bypass, this is the kick drum as it stands. And you can hear how the attack and the sound of the drum opens up more. Now I'm going to take this a release time and I'm going to set it to a faster release time. So that's doesn't seem to be as open sounding as the 100 milliseconds. All right, so this gives us a more open sound. Let's go to 200 milliseconds. So here, even with this, with 200 milliseconds, which is a fairly long time for this type of technique, what we're doing is we're really kind of toning down the actual rest of the tone of the drum with the release time, setting it long, but allowing the attack or transient signal to pop through, and this helps to make the sound more aggressive. And it looks like we ran out of time, so let's start over again. And this has an auto makeup gain, right? So that kind of deals with there. Now on this end, we can control how aggressive the attack is. So that's softer. Right? And this will give us a little bit more, a slightly more aggressive sound. We can also play with this characteristic here, which is the attack. Slow down the attack. Right? So this is more focused. This is a little more open sounding. Now if we make the attack really fast, it's going to cut down that attack. And what we really want to do is we want to allow that attack to kind of pop through. This shapes the filter characteristic for how the threshold is triggered. And now we can kind of play with this to see if we can get a better sound. And maybe slow down the release. And so you can see how you can really shape the sound of the kick drum and the openness of it. Right, so with this setting right here, what we're really doing is we're allowing the attack, and this is not like over compressing it. What we're really doing is just a little bit of pumping and breathing. And allowing that signal to kind of pop through without making it too aggressive. One way that we could actually enhance this is by actually taking the subtractive EQ, which is very important, and this is really what makes this work, and we can actually go ahead and filter up some high frequencies. And so if we wanted to get a more aggressive approach here, what we could do is we could just take and sometimes I like to do this where I just kind of take a frequency here with a kind of wide band, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of air into this. So that's enhancing more of the attack of the drum. And now when I bring this up, that helps to enhance this even greater. And I like this better because it allows a little bit more of the attack to come through. And if we're getting too much of a hiss or something, we can always filter on the top end. Right, so you can hear what the subtractive EQ does, and this is really important because you can hear how this affects the compression, right? So I want to take away those parts of the kick drum and shape the kick drum sound prior to the compression. Most people EQ after compression because when you're making adjustments to the EQ, it's going to affect the threshold. And that's very important to understand. But as long as you understand that, then you can set things accordingly. What this does is it allows you to shape and get rid of the rubbish that is going on before the kick drum. So when you compress it, what it's doing is it's compressing the elements or the sound of the kick drum that you really want. The focus on the low end fundamental and the attack, which is up higher in frequency here. Okay, so there you have it. There's a quick video on how to add attack using a VCA compressor on a kick drum. And this concludes this Mixing with Mike mixing tip.